Good morning. I hope you had a great Father's Day. Here it is, Monday morning. We got record heat coming this week. In fact, it said here in San Antonio that the heat index is going to get to 120. Tomorrow I got to be out cutting grass and weed eating, so pray for me I don't get too dehydrated. And but we're closer and closer to getting that place manageable. Uh, I'm going to finish the book of Revelation by Friday, Lord willing. I'm going to cover two chapters today. These two chapters are parenthetical to the whole book. Okay, so I have to explain. A lot of people get lost when they're reading through the book of Revelation, and I want to help you to understand it. The book of Revelation is not all written chronologically. It stops between various chapters to give insight or background information on what's going on behind the scenes. Here we have that happening again. We've come all the way from the rapture to the middle of the tribulation to the battle of Armageddon at the very end of the tribulation, which sets the stage for the return of Christ. Let me give you the big picture. And then I'm going to break down the parenthesis of what's going on behind the scene. If you ever wanted to know what God thinks of wokeness and what's going on in the world today, you're going to read about it in Revelation chapter 17 and 18. He describes wokeness in a very, very graphic terms. And he uses the strongest language possible to try to convey what he thinks of it. And yet here we have a day and age where it's being supported, and we're going to see that in Revelation chapter 17 and 18. Okay, let me just kind of point out to you on the whiteboard here that when we get to Revelation 17, 18, we're going to hear a lot about Babylon. Now, when you hear about Babylon, we need to understand that it's a double use of the word. It's talking about not only a place, but it's also talking about a system. And I give you an example of that. If we think of Hollywood, we can think of a geographical location out in California. But we can also talk about Hollywood as a way of doing films and a system of the way they do cinema. We also can do that as an illustration with Wall Street. Wall Street is both a geographical place and it describes an economical system of dealing with finances and stocks and so on. The same thing when we talk about the term Babylon. If you need to understand that, it's because if you don't make that distinction and make that separation, you'll confuse the two. So Babylon is talking about both a place and a system. Okay? In fact, I titled this message The Whore of Wokeness. Or we could also say the whore of Babylon. Babylon's been around for a long time. If you can remember the story of Babel, okay, where these people came together in disobedience to God, they tried to build a tower that would reach up into the heavens. And Nimrod is the one that started all that, and God had to come down and confuse all the languages so people would go and separate themselves and hang with one another. Babylon is a term that is used for an ecclesiastical system that commits adultery and fornication with people. Okay, so we understand that. Keep that in your mind. Okay, this 7 year period is the tribulation. If you remember and you go back to Revelation, John is told to write those things which are past, present, and future. The book of Daniel gives us the apocalyptic timeline for how this is going to take place, when it's going to take place. Okay, the church is currently in what's called a timeout period. Eschatologically, time is not being counted down. It doesn't start again until the Antichrist makes a peace treaty with Israel, which is at the start of the tribulation, and the church is already gone. It has been raptured out. At the beginning of the tribulation, you have this spiritual formation of a one world religious system. This one world religious system is supported by the governments of the world. It's sort of like the wokeness. And you got your WHO organization, and eventually you're going to have, they're the ones that want to control what everybody does under one system concerning your health. And eventually it's going to be supported by all the governments on the earth. That's what wokeness is leading to, an ecumenical system that is inclusive of all religions, cults, and ideology. Okay? This is going to be supported by the kings of the earth. This is taking place during the first half of the tribulation. Also, during that period, God begins to send judgments. There's the seven seal judgments. He then sends his two witnesses to proclaim the gospel to people. At the middle of the tribulation, Satan is given the key to the abyss. He's thrown out of heaven. He releases a lot of demons that are empowered to torture people for 6 months and then eventually put them to death. He also commits the abomination of desolation, and he requires people to receive the mark of the beast either on their right hand or on their forehead in order to buy or sell. If you don't receive the mark of the beast, he looks for you and kills you. He's got a lot of demons that are active that have been released from the abyss to do that. Okay. He also creates what's called the unholy trinity. As I told you, there was Satan is the dragon, and then you have two beasts. The first beast from the sea and the second beast from the earth. The first beast from the sea is the Antichrist. The second beast from the earth is the false prophet. He's the charming guy that comes on like Joel, whatever his name, out of Houston, and tells you all the things you want to hear and makes you feel good and fuzzy and all that stuff. But inside, he's a ravenous wolf. He wants to kill you. Okay, he's deceptive. And what happens is these false prophet leads all these political entities and commercial entities that are woke, like Bud Light, Target, and all these other, yeah, even now I heard Crackle Bear. Can you believe that? All these different Chick-fil-A and all these others that are doing this in order that they may get a certain code so they can continue to receive certain financial privileges, from what I understand. And if they don't do that, they don't get it, they lose some money. But I think they're going to lose money by doing that anyway. Okay, so that's what's happening. You have the seven trumpet judgments, and we're talking about massive plagues like God turns the sea into a third of it into blood and eventually just kills all the marine life by making the whole sea turn into blood. We have earthquakes. We got 100-pound hail that is coming down. Now it's hot this week here in Texas, but can you imagine being scorching hot when everything and no water? No water. Now you go outside today and go out there and just picture that scenario. No more mountains. All the islands have been sunk. There's nowhere to hide. Demons are looking for you. If you receive the mark of the beast, God kills you. So you're in a real dilemma by now if you're still alive during the tribulation, and you're not a believer. The only ones that are going to get through this are believers, but most of them will be martyred and killed, and some will make it through to the end. There's 144,000 Jews that come from the 12 tribes of Israel that God is supernaturally protecting through this whole process. Okay, what happens in the first half of the tribulation? The government support this ecclesiastical system that's headed up by the Antichrist. Okay, he then, all the government no longer supports this ecclesiastical system when Satan sets himself up to be God. Okay? They fall away from it. That's what we're going to see in chapter 18 of Revelation. Then at the very end, they're deceived again. Okay? They don't learn their lesson, and they think they're somehow can do battle with the Lord Jesus Christ and his armies at the battle of Armageddon and come away victorious. Okay, so when we read chapter 17, if you can kind of put it on the first half, chapter 18 in the second half, so you can kind of get the big picture of it. Okay, it's parenthetical to let us know what's going on behind the scenes while all this other stuff is going on. Okay, let me read some of it to you, and I'll give you some explanation as we go through it all. I don't want to lose you. Um, okay, here we go. By the way, if anybody can hear me, just say I can hear you, Manny. Okay, because I don't even know if this thing is working. Okay, if not, I'll do it again. Okay, 100-pound hails has already came down. The last bowl judgment has already happened. We're at the end of the tribulation. And now John is in heaven. Thank you, Kathy. Now John is in heaven giving an explanation of what's been going on behind the scenes throughout this past 7 years. One of the seven angels who had seven bowls came and said to me, "Come and I will show you the punishment of the great prostitute." That's that ecclesiastical system, who sits on many waters. Many waters is symbolic of people everywhere. Okay? With her kings on the earth committed adultery. That's the kings of the earth that supported this false ecumenical system. And the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries. Look how God describes wokeness. Okay, you see Biden up there promoting wokeness and all this inclusive ideology, embracing every kind of evil, deviant sexual behavior. That what God thinks of it is it's extremely wickedness. He calls it being intoxicated by her adulteries. This false woke system that originates with Satan himself from the pits of hell. You should not be supporting this in any shape, and when I'm going to read it, tell you what God says about that. Okay? Then the angel carried me away in the spirit into a desert. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. These are the political systems or kings that are supporting this ecclesiastical wokeness in the first half of the tribulation. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand filled with abominable things with the filth of her adulteries. And you think of all these false prophets and false teachers that preach about health and wealth and all this stuff. This is the kind of uh, person that is that Satan is utilizing to promote his abominable lies and so forth. And God is very descriptive of this person. He says the title was written on her forehead, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. So when you support wokeness in this ecumenical system, what God says you're doing is basically engage in adultery and fornication and prostitution. Because you're following a system that is anti-God, that is very pro-Satan. Okay? And God says either you're for me or or you're against me. And he's making it really clear, come out from among them and be separate. Okay. I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints. She killing a lot of Christians. Huh? They're doing it now. They're looking around, that we have more martyrs today than any time in history. You don't read about it. But in other countries, and even now beginning the persecution that's happened to Christians in this country is unlike anything that has ever happened before. And they're trying to create laws now that even make it even more applicable and possible for them to do a lot of bad things to Christians. The woman was drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. You want to stand for the Lord Jesus Christ, you're going to pay a price. Might as well make it up in your mind right now that, to die is to live, and so what can they do to you? God says not to fear them that can hurt the body, but those that can kill the soul. They can't do anything to me. Okay, they may throw me in prison. They can throw me in solitary. They can shoot me, but I'm still alive. I'm still before God. You see that? So the Apostle Paul had a very interesting solution to all this because they were being heavily persecuted the first time. You know what they did? They put themselves under a death sentence. It's not I that live, but Christ that lives in me. I am crucified with Christ. So if you're already under a death sentence and somebody kills you, well, you were expecting that anyway. It's hard to hurt somebody or intimidate that way if they're under that own self-imposed death sentence. That's what all Christians need to do. Okay. When I saw her, I was greatly astonished. Then the angel said to me, why are you astonished? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and the beast she rides. That's the political system, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast which you saw once was and now is not, and will come up out of the abyss to his destruction. That's Satan. The inhabitants of the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from creation of the world, will be astonished when they see the beast, because he once was and now is not and yet will come again. In other words, a resurrection. Okay, of a political system or of the Antichrist himself. We don't know. Okay, it's speculation. I told you if there's something I don't know, I will tell you that. Okay, I'm not certain at this point. This calls, in fact, apparently it's for a lot of other people, because this calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. Now, that could either be a geographical place. A lot of people think it's Rome because there were 7 hills there, and other people think it was 7 different kings or political systems. They are 7 kings, 5 had fallen, 1 is the other and not yet come. But when he does come, he must remain for a little while. The beast who once was and now is not is an 8th king. He belongs to the 7 and is going to his destruction. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received the kingdom. So apparently this was yet future, and they haven't received authority yet to do things. But who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. So apparently this is when they're going to be empowered and they're going to turn against the ecumenical system so they can go in the battle of Armageddon. They have one purpose and will give their power and authority to the beast. They will make war with the Lamb at the battle of Armageddon. Okay? But the Lamb will overcome them because he is Lord of Lords and King of Kings. That's what he's going to do to wokeness. At some point, he's the king, he's Lord, he's silly, wicked, foolish politicians and woke advocates and all these lesbian, gay, transgender, deviant people that are bragging and taunting God by putting his rainbow covenant sign in his face and waving and all that. God is sitting on his throne right now laughing at you. Your day is coming, okay? And it's sooner than you think. He is the king, and with him will be called his chosen and faithful followers. That's you and I. With him will be his called, chosen, and faithful followers, but not those whose names are not written in the Lamb's book of life. Then the angel said to me, the waters you saw, okay, that's the many people, where the prostitute sits, okay, that's that ecclesiastical wokeness leaders, and peoples, multitude, nations, language. The beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. All of a sudden now they're turning against the ecclesiastical system that was all ecumenical. They will breed her to ruin and leave her naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. So all the priests and people that were promoted and all these Episcopalian women that are priests and all these so-called women prophets and all that, they're going to get their flesh eaten. Okay? They will bring her to the room and leave her naked and will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to accomplish his purpose by agreeing to give the beasts their power to rule until God's words are fulfilled. The women you saw is the great city that rules over the kingdoms of the earth. So you have both here the political system and also the ecclesiastical system, also a commercial system. Okay, so this is primarily taking place during the first half of tribulation, chapter 17. Chapter 18 now. Get God's warning. Okay. After this, I saw another angel coming down from heaven. He had great authority, and the earth was illuminated by his splendor. Man, I would love to see that. And with a mighty voice, he shouted. Now, this is the second half. Fallen, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a home for demons. You want to support wokeness? You want to support this all ecumenical, inclusive movement that embraces everything and every kind of cult and religious ideology? Let me tell you, it is a home for demons, a haunt for every evil spirit, a haunt for every unclean and detestable birds. For all the nations have drunk the maddening wine of her adultery. That's what God thinks. You CEOs, you politicians that embrace this nonsense, this is what God thinks of you. Evil, deviant, sick minded people that would support satanic lies. Okay? The kings of the earth committed adultery with her, and the merchants, listen to this, of the earth grew rich from her excessive luxuries. Why a lot of these people that are going woke this business? Why? Money. Well, if we don't do this, we're going to lose money. They do it for money. That's their God. Okay? Now they give you have workers manuals when you go in different corporations, different business, or even apartment complex where you got to sign these and agree to their exclusiveness and wokeness and embrace all this sick ideology, of all people. God does not want us to do that. Okay, either you're going to support God or you're going to support Satan. Which one are you going to do? You can't be in the middle. You can't stick your head in the sand. Well, this doesn't concern me. Okay. Even if you say nothing, you're supporting Satan. So you're either going to take a stand at this time. How do you know that God didn't put you on earth at this time to take a stand for him? This is where you can demonstrate your greatness in him by demonstrating faith, by not supporting this sick ideology of wokeness that's all inclusive and embracing every kind of evil imaginable. And then they're attacking children, aborting babies, committing infanticide. Sickening. Absolutely. See, a lot of women are pretty and they look good and all that, and they're supporting all that. I don't see their prettiness. I see these ugly demons speaking out of their mouth. How can you even live with such a person? These liberal, feminists, silly looking, brainless. I mean, and I listen to them, they're trying to talk about multi-genders and that men can give birth to children and all. And how stupid can they be? And to think that businesses and politicians and even our educational system supports this. How insane can that be? That's why it's descriptive, is that they are drunk with her idolatries, her lies. They're not thinking right. They're mentally insane. Satan has got them that way. You know? Let me tell you, you flip over to that, it's hard coming back. You know? I feel sorry for a lot of these people. Then I heard another voice from heaven say, and here's God saying, come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins. Can it be any clearer than that? So that you will not receive any of her plagues, for her sins are piled up to heaven. You think God is not taking note? He says their sins are piled up to heaven. That's pretty high. Okay? And God has remembered her crimes. They say it's a crime not to embrace these lesbian, gays, transgender people. Yeah, it's a crime to do it. Can you imagine these drag queens going in libraries and schools and promoting evil like that? You don't think that reaches to God and He doesn't take note of that? You parents that take your kids there, are you stupid? Give back to her as she has given. Pay her back double for what she has done. Mix her a double portion of her own cup. Give her as much torture and grief as the glory and luxury she gave herself. And you see these people, these drag queens dressing all these flamboyant clothes and all that, and they're up there modeling and doing all that. God says, as much as you're doing that, that's what you're going to get. In her heart she boasts, I sit as queen. I am not a widow, and I will never mourn. Therefore, in one day, her plagues will overtake her, death, mourning, and famine, and she will be consumed by fire, for mighty as the Lord God who judges her. When the kings of the earth who committed adultery with her and shared her luxuries see the smoke of her burning, they will weep and mourn over her, terrified at her torment. All you CEOs, all you politicians that are all arrogant and all that, one day we're going to watch you cry and weep, okay, at her torment. And they will stand far off and cry, woe, 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 great city, O Babylon, city, in 1 hour your doom has come. The merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her because no one buys their cargoes anymore. Cargoes of gold, silver, precious stone, and so on. It gives a whole list, and this continues on in this second half of tribulation. Down to verse 14, they will say, the fruit you long for is gone from you. All your riches and splendor have vanished. I mean, young people that are seeking to get rich with crypto and other fast schemes on Amazon and different now virtue intelligence and all that are with the stock and all that's going to be gone. You need to be investing your things and your time for things that account for eternity because all that will be gone. They will say the fruit you long for is gone from you. All your riches and splendors have vanished, never to be recovered. Down to every sea captain and all who travel by ship, the sailors and all the people that transfer and the living things will stand afar off. And when they see the smoke of her burning, they will exclaim, was there ever a city like this great city? They're looking at Babylon, this ecclesiastic and political system and all this commercial system that they had invested and put all their trust in. Woe, woe, O great city, where are all the ships where all who had ships on the sea became rich through her wealth. In 1 hour she has been brought to ruin. Rejoice over here, O heaven. Rejoice. Hey, that's what he says to do. When you see that happen, saints, rejoice. Okay? Then a mighty angel picked up a boulder the size of a large millstone and threw it into the sea and said, with such violence, the great city of Babylon will be thrown down, never to be found again. The music of her harpist, the musician, the flute players, all you entertainers in church, okay, that come in there and, create hero worship by promoting sick and silly 7-Eleven music, all of you, that's all going to end. Okay, we won't have to put up or listen to that anymore. We'll never be heard in you again. No workman of any trade will ever be found in you again. The sound of a millstone will never be heard in you again. The light of a lamp will never shine in you again. The voice of a bridegroom and bride will never be heard in you again. Your merchants were the world's great men. By your magic spell, all the nations were led astray, and in her was found blood, the blood of prophets and of the saints and of all who have been killed on the earth. The whore of wokeness. You want to know what God thinks of it? I just read it to you. Okay? What's the bottom line here? You don't support it. Anytime you give credence to woke ideology or a false ecumenical or religious system, you're committing idolatry and you're committing adultery and fornication with something that is false. What happened to Israel when they kept doing that? God sold them into captivity. Okay? He says, hey, you don't want to fall through, I'll send you away. He hasn't changed. Romans 1, what does he say? He turns you over now into captivity, but not to its people, into your own mind. How do you think these people are able to sell depravity and somehow justify it? Because they've been given over to the depravity of their own mind. They don't think right and straight anymore. Okay? That's why when you try to argue with them and talk logic with them, they're not able to do it. The best they can do is start cussing you and saying bad things about you and flipping you off and all that stuff. Okay? They try to intimidate you. But they shouldn't intimidate the saints of God. We're a royal priesthood. You know, apart from God, we can do nothing. But in Christ, we can do all things. What does God want you to do at this time in history? He wants you to stand for righteousness. He says you're in the world, but not of the world. You don't participate in the works of darkness. Rather, you expose them. That's what I do. You know, does it create me enemies? Yeah, but it also creates a lot of friends. Who do you want to hang with? You want to hang with deviant people? You want to hang with people that are, they recognize their sinners, but they are under God's grace and mercy. I know this has gone long. We covered 2 chapters. This was a parenthesis through the book of Revelation. Chapter 17 pretty much talks about what goes on behind the scenes in the first half of the tribulation. And chapter 18 talks about what goes on in the second half and what God thinks of it all. Tough message. Hang in. God bless you all.